I'm Michelle.
And I'm Lucy.
Welcome to another special episode. And today, interesting one.
Henry's kids.
Henry's kids.
And Elizabeth's.
Yes. Yeah. You know, she did all the work.
Yeah, no, I was trying to give it a more snappy title than Henry VII and Elizabeth of York's children. So what sort of childhood did Arthur, Margaret, Henry and Mary and their siblings have?
They would have been vastly different, though, wouldn't they? I'm just going to start off with that, because Arthur had a completely different... He was sent off. Okay, yeah.
Were Henry and Elizabeth good parents? And by whose standards, ours or theirs?
Ooh.
A very different parenting.
Yes.
I think they'd probably be horrified to find... Well, actually, as royal children, they probably have the same sort of rather stultified childhood that kids have now. That they're not allowed out.
Oh,
they're not allowed anywhere out. They have to be supervised all the time.
24/7, because the world is evil.
And who else influenced them as they were growing up? Elizabeth of York spent much of her pregnancy with Arthur in the Palace of Placentia,
Sounds
renamed
like
by
placenta.
Henry Greenwich Palace, who probably found it difficult to say as well. This was away from the stresses and diseases of London. And it was up to Henry to make the arrangements for Elizabeth's confinement.
Really?
Yep.
Not his mum?
Well, she might have told him what to do, maybe.
Probably.
What you need to get.
Yes. Here's the list, and this is the order that you're going to do it in. Oh, and I conveniently put in the dates so you know when to order it and when to order it so it arrives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What would he do without his mum? He bought furs, or she bought furs and cotton sheets. I was trying to work out where the cotton came from, but apparently Eastern Mediterranean.
Really?
New furniture, feather-filled cushions.
New furniture. I love this. I'm going to have a baby, so you're going to redo the entire house. I want everything new. Throw out everything old. Doesn't matter if it's still good. Give it to somebody else.
Yeah. And 2 velvet-covered saddles. I don't know what he thought she'd want saddles for and why she'd need 2 of them, but anyway, that's what she's got.
Is she going on progress to show off her belly?
No.
Did they do that? Did they go on progress just to show that the queen was pregnant?
I don't know, that would be quite dangerous, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
I would have thought you don't take any risks.
No.
And he chose that their child should be born in Camelot, or Winchester, and that he should be called Arthur, after his ancestor. I thought it was interesting. Possibly, had he lived, Arthur would have been given the title Arthur II.
Really?
Yeah, and that would have really cemented the Tudor Arthurian claim.
I love that. That would have been cool. I'm Arthur II. Who was Arthur I? A fictional person.
No, our ancestor. A very chivalric man.
Whose wife cheated on him because he was a poor lover.
Yes. Yeah, it really is extraordinary for a chivalric tale, I think.
Yes, you're being cuckolded, and that is something that everybody should be ashamed of, but it's going to be lauded as amazing. What?
And Lancelot, who's meant to be so chivalric, is doing the cuckolding.
Yes.
Yeah, very odd. As the time of Elizabeth's confinement drew near, the whole court set off for Winchester. So, I mean, she is travelling while pregnant, obviously. And they seem to have left it to the last minute as well, which is going to be really uncomfortable for her.
Yeah. And why didn't they put her in a litter?
Hang on. Arthur was born on the 20th of September.
Yes.
That's today.
Oh, yes it is. Happy birthday.
Oh, happy birthday, Arthur. A month earlier than expected, which caught out one of his godfathers, John de
Which is
Vere.
why the rumour started that he waited till she was pregnant before they got married. We don't actually have any evidence that she was pregnant before they got married. All evidence is that he was born premature, but everybody says, ooh.
Well, he's a good-looking man.
With his little fingers.
He's got lovely fingers. After the ceremony, there was the inevitable gout-ridden feasting, probably on the round table that you can still see in Winchester.
Which is cool.
Just to hammer home the whole King Arthur thing. Once the court made the trek back from Winchester, Arthur was given an entirely separate household at Farnham Castle in Surrey,
off he goes.
a day's ride out of London.
That's horrible.
Yeah. Arthur started to make himself useful at 18 months.
Sorry.
Go on, lad. Get out and earn some money.
This is a shovel. I know you can only do a teaspoon at a time, but start digging.
Well, it's when those interminable negotiations for his marriage to Catherine of Aragon started.
Right.
You can make yourself useful by joining us with Spain. On the 29th of November 1489, when he was 3, he was made Earl of Chester and Prince of Wales, and was granted his estates on the marches of Wales. And if you remember, William Stanley wanted to be Earl of Chester.
Yes.
And that's why Henry was so reluctant to allow it, because it's a title for princes. So you're pushing your luck there, William. Obviously, Arthur wasn't going to be ruling the marches himself at the age of 3. So Uncle Jasper was wheeled in to run his council.
When you say wheeled in, I think of him as drunk in a wheelbarrow.
Quite possibly. But it meant it was time for Arthur to move down to Ludlow. And he was to be allocated humanist tutors of the academic calibre of Bernard Andre, lucky boy.
Ooh, somebody who can make up everything.
Well, I can remember Andre saying in the episode we did on him that Arthur had read, inwardly digested, or at least skimmed through all the books that Andre recommended to him. Opened it up, flipped through them, thought,
No pictures.
No. We know the classical texts that Arthur skimmed through since Andre kept a list. And they include Cicero, Homer, Virgil and Ovid. And I'd have thought Ovid was a little bit racy for a young boy.
I've never read it, so I don't know.
Ah.
Is this something else I'm going to have to read? You have to watch movies and I have to read books.
Yes. I still don't do it, I'm afraid. Ovid, yeah, there seem to be mostly about men chasing women through woods and they have to turn into trees just to avoid his unwanted attentions.
That's not so cool. So Greek myth.
Yeah.
Okay.
Arthur was allocated friends to play with, including Griffith ap Rhys ap Thomas. And they would be friends for life. I say for life. Neither of them lasted very long, sadly. Well, we heard that when Arthur boasted that he'd been in the midst of Spain, it was to Griffith that he made that boast. And I think this is Henry saying, look, he's Welsh, be friends with him. Make us look more Welsh. On the 28th November 1489, Princess Margaret was born. And they didn't bother with the whole Winchester thing for this one.
She's just a girl.
She was named Margaret after someone or other.
Oh, I don't know. She's named Margaret after Margaret of Burgundy.
Shh. She was baptised in London, but the inevitable Margaret Beaufort arranged for the silver font to be delivered from Canterbury.
Ooh.
Which must have been a pain in the backside for everybody. I was thinking, what? That's going to weigh half a hundredweight.
It's an awful long way to bring it.
It is, on muddy tracks and cross fields. On 28th June 1491, another child was born. And after the massive disappointment of Margaret, I'm happy to say that this one was a boy, Henry. When Arthur was born, bonfires were lit in the streets, and Elizabeth of York gave thanks by founding a chapel in Winchester Cathedral. We don't hear about bonfires being lit for Henry or chapels being founded. The heir is exciting, the spare, less so, I think.
Yeah.
Still, he made up for it later, didn't he?
Not in a good way.
Anyway, he was born at Placentia. Margaret had been born in London, but that was in November, so maybe a June birth, there's more fear of disease.
Makes sense.
Whereas, yeah.
Yeah, spring and summer were the scary times, weren't they? We keep thinking of fall as the flu season, but it was the spring and summer
The heat
for plague.
gets you.
Mosquitoes and... Malaria, yeah.
The whole thing.
So yeah, stay away from city centres. But then you're going to bring a whole city with you when you come.
Yes.
I'm bringing 2,000 people and all their animals.
And all their diseases.
Yes.
Young Henry was baptised by Bishop Fox.
Aww.
I have a lot more information on Henry than the others, you'd be delighted to hear, since I had one general book on all the children and one just on Henry.
Oh.
For some reason, one's quite as interested in the others. Soon after Henry was born, the midwife bathed him, anointed him with olive oil and sprinkled him with rose water. He was then swaddled in blue velvet and cloth of gold.
Sorry, the midwife anointed him with olive oil? And
So it's midwife.
what does that mean? She wants a slippery baby.
Yes. I thought, don't cover him with damp things and then wrap him up. He'll get all itchy.
Unless they wash him with a fairly caustic soap and then they put the oil on to protect his skin. Why? Like, this makes no sense. He's not a turkey. He is a turkey, but okay.
And also, I didn't feel that cloth of gold was the ideal fabric for a baby.
No. Okay. No, that can't be right. Prior to the baptism, the baby is anointed with oil on the chest.
Oh, was that a sort of pre-baptism?
Yeah.
Just to make sure they're relatively safe until the baptism proper?
Yeah.
Because we've heard that if a child is almost certainly going to die, the midwife is able to do the baptism.
It's on Midwifery Then and Now on Eidolon website. So preparations beforehand were olive oil, warm water, warm fomentations, whatever those are, soft sea sponges, pieces of wool, bandages, and a pillow. Dun, dun, dun. Yeah, it's sort of a half baptism, it looks like. Like just enough to keep you from going to hell before your baptism.
I suppose it's a comfort for the parents.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if it's a sickly child, not that he was. But when he was baptised, there were carpets on the floor of the church. On the floor, not on the walls or on the table, on the floor, for everyone to walk over. It's very decadent.
Very.
Salt was put on baby Henry's tongue after it had been first tasted and tested for poison. And wax from the bishop's taper and some holy oil were mixed into the water where Henry was dunked 3 times. Then the court trumpeters started blaring
And the
out.
poor baby is scared to death and starts screaming.
Yes, there's nothing in this that's going to be conducive to babies.
You're supposed to keep him calm and happy and, hey, you're alive. No.
Anyway, all this
Don't
cleanses the baby of the evil spirits. Although with Henry, I can't help feeling that they might have missed a bit.
Yeah.
And on the 2nd of July, 1492, another child, Elizabeth. So that's 4 babies in 6 years. So Elizabeth of York is really taking her duties seriously.
No kidding. Is that different from other queens, though? Wasn't that the idea? Like, they didn't even breastfeed so that they'd be able to have the next baby quicker.
Churn them out, yeah.
Gosh.
Well, 2 boys and 2 girls is a good ratio for a royal family, with marriage treaties to make.
Yes, and a spare.
Prince Henry was a precocious boy. He was made Constable of Dover Castle when he was just 2, and Lieutenant of Ireland when he was 3.
Oh, he was an effective constable.
And that's why you need Deputy Lieutenants of Ireland like Gerald Fitzgerald, because they keep giving the job to tiny children.
That can't do anything.
In the same year, he was also made a Knight of the Bath and the Duke of York.
And the Duke of York was because of
Perkin.
I was going to say Lambert. Was it Simnel?
Perkin.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's hard to keep it straight after you've discussed so many things. At least I find it so.
Isn't it? I wonder if it'll all be much clearer on the next season.
Maybe we have more exposure to Henry VIII and his cronies, but then I'm going to struggle with keeping all of the movies and TV shows and stuff out of my head while we're researching the real history.
I don't watch any of those, so at least I haven't got that baggage to drag with me. Well, we shall see. I feel we're almost there. I mean, we're not. We've got months to go. But I think it's because I've already written out everything we're going to be doing. I mean, we don't know the order of the ones coming out of the box, but it's there, written down.
Right, we get to refill the box.
Oh, yeah. Anyway. Before the investiture of the dukedom, Prince Henry was in a great procession. He then attended a feast where he wasn't allowed to eat, but just held the towel for his father to wipe his hands on.
Yeah, that's evil for a little kid.
It really is. I hope they gave him something before. I mean, if he's anything like my granddaughter, he'll be going, "I'm hungry," all the time. We have a detailed description of the night of the bath ceremony. He was undressed and placed in the water. John de Vere read some chivalric words over him. The king made a sign of the cross on his son's shoulder and then kissed it. And then little Henry was dressed in hermit's clothes. I don't know what a hermit wears necessarily, but apparently they've got a uniform. And then the new knights would go to the chapel and keep vigil overnight, although it's thought that little Henry wasn't put through this last bit. I wouldn't have wanted to be with him the following day if he'd had a sleepless night. It'd have been foul.
Definitely give him to his governess.
The following day he was dressed up. The Marquis of Dorset and the Duke of Buckingham placed little spurs on his little feet.
Aww.
His father strapped on his sword and then stood him on the table so that everyone could admire him. Meanwhile, the girls got nothing. But they were allowed to attend the ceremonies to see when their brothers got lots of stuff. So that's nice.
Is it? I can see little Margaret just seething. She seems like that kind of entitled person, like, this should be me.
Yes. Yeah, she certainly came across that way.
Yes.
She came across as a bit of a spoilt brat.
Yes.
But as a woman, as a girl, it wouldn't even have crossed her mind that she should have these things at that time.
I don't know.
Don't you think?
I never know, because somebody had to start that "we are equal," which means it had to have been thought somewhere. Mm. So I tend to think her of all people would be like, I can do this. I don't know.
It's not. I don't think so. She's so much an "I can do this," but I want those things.
Yes, Veruca Salt.
Yes. Or Violet Elizabeth Bott. I'll scream and scream and scream until I sick because I can.
Oh, I don't know that one.
Just William. Yeah, I have more things to read. Can read Just William. They're very good. Anyway, a lot was made that this perfect little nuclear family was a sign that Henry VII's taking of the throne was the will of God. So how much harder must it have been for Henry VIII when his sons didn't come? Did that mean his monarchy wasn't the will of God?
Yep. God said, you're an entitled bugger.
Yes. I can't think of a better description of him. Anyway, we're keeping an open mind before next season.
No, we're not. You can.
Okay, I'll do my best. While Arthur was in Ludlow, Prince Henry, Margaret and young Elizabeth lived in a peripatetic nursery, moving from Greenwich to Sheen to Westminster to Eltham.
And they did that to avoid buildup of diseases, correct?
Yeah.
Constantly moving. I
They spent most of the time at Eltham, though. They like that best.
Yes, that was the nursery palace. I think they even called it the nursery palace, if I remember correctly, which could be wrong.
These would have been a home from home for Elizabeth of York, but not, of course, for Henry VII, who had a very different upbringing.
Yeah.
Because she'd have spent her childhood in all these places.
Yes, and didn't they also use some of her nurses? Yeah, that would have been lovely. I think I would have done the same. I would have probably kept them together.
One of the reasons for having the children away from the parental home was partly tradition.
Yes.
Also, the parental home would probably be filthy.
Yeah, with that many people coming in and out.
Yeah, the rushes on the floor were not that often changed. Usually they were just added to, and so they become mired up with, quote, leakages of men, cats and dogs, unquote.
Oh, was that from Desiderius? Erasmus?
I think it might have been Erasmus. Yeah, it sounds like him.
Talks about how they don't do it for like 20 years.
He was horrified.
Yes.
Obviously, Rotterdam is a lot cleaner than London. The other reason was danger. People were in and out of the court all the time. You've got ambassadors and heralds and people presenting petitions.
Yeah.
They could be harbouring weapons or, even worse, diseases.
Well, think about it now. You get somebody new that comes in from a different area, and everybody that he shows up to gets sick. Because it's a different disease.
So what was their childhood like? When they were very small, Elizabeth would have hired a wet nurse for them. And these had to be women of good character, since it was thought that that would be passed on with the milk.
Through the milk, of all things.
Thomas Eliot, who was a sort of social influencer of his day, said, quote, "The child sucketh the vice of his nurse with the milk of her pap," unquote. There aren't enough paps these days. I think bring back paps.
Do we want to?
She should also have, quote, "a sanguine complexion," unquote.
What is a sanguine complexion?
I suppose it's quite a ruddy face, isn't it, showing that she's healthy.
I hope so. It can't be pale and interesting.
I mean, not too ruddy. Well, if she has got a sanguine face, she'd be more likely to produce milk that, quote, "excelleth all other, both in sweetness and substance," unquote. But if the wet nurse's milk should decline, she was given stewed sheep or goat's udders and powdered earthworm, for reasons that should be obvious to everybody. As we discussed before, the huge drawback of this arrangement was that the wet nurse's own child would get the colostrum,
Yes.
which is produced before the actual milk comes through, and is so important to a healthy immune system. It'd be interesting to know, but probably impossible to find out, what percentage of child mortality there was between the nobles and the wet nurse's children.
Anne breastfed Elizabeth for the first little bit. That might be why she survived and was a healthy child. Catherine did not do that with her babies. You get her a better chance anyway.
Yeah, women who wanted to breastfeed were sort of vilified.
Oh, yeah. I think I read that Henry was just... was he disgusted by it? I can't remember.
Plenty of people, well, men and women, were disgusted by it. The staff of the nursery would have been required to treat any infant complaints the children might have, like rubbing chicken fat mixed with dog's milk or hare's brains on their gums when they were teething.
What?
Covering their heads with honey when they had a cold. Oh, I don't want to wash their hair after that.
Yeah.
Or putting a plaster of hot oil and wax on their bellies for wind. But actually, quite honestly, are there any remedies for those ailments that work today? I mean, with wind, you just shove them over your shoulder and bash away at their backs for a while, don't you?
Yeah.
Until the inevitable... gently. Until the inevitable happens.
That's awesome.
And teething, well, there's not much you can do with teething. Some of the staff were specifically for certain points in the children's lives. So the carer, Alice Bywimble, it's a nice name, I like that, and the cradle rocker, Margaret Troughton, moved from child to child as each new one was born.
Yeah, that they actually hired people to rock a cradle continuously when the baby was... How do you teach the baby to sleep when you're not being rocked?
I don't know. I can't see... Well, unless she could read at the same time, I can't see that being a particularly satisfying job.
No.
Rocking a cradle all the time. And presumably they must have had night rockers and day rockers. But nurses like Princess Margaret's nurse, Alice Davy, stayed with her throughout her childhood. And there could be great affection between a wet nurse and her charge, as Prince Henry invited his wet nurse, Alice Oxenbridge, to his coronation.
Didn't she also... Who was the king that his nurse kissed him on his brow every night before bed? Was that Henry?
Well, he was...
When he was an adult.
I wonder if he liked it, or whether he was just saying, "Look, get off! I'm King of England!"
I wonder about Google sometimes. Because I try to look it up, and instead it brings up the V-Day kiss, the famous naval kiss. I don't know. I thought it was Henry VIII.
It would be quite embarrassing if he's in bed with Catherine of Aragon or any of the others to have his nurse come in and give him a kiss goodnight. Or indeed Mary Boleyn, or any of his mistresses.
Nope. Can't find it. I don't know where I read that.
Just because Elizabeth and Henry weren't always with their children, it doesn't mean they weren't thinking of them. They both wrote to them and to the staff looking after them to check they were okay and to hear about their progress. And the children would send them examples of their work to stick on their fridge. And we can see a lot of examples in Elizabeth of York's accounts of fabric being sent to the children to be made into clothes and a presents. We don't see this in Henry's accounts, just £30 to demoiselle that dances. But that wasn't because he took no interest in his children, it was the mother's role to attend to these things. He did pay for the staff and the upkeep of the buildings where his children lived. There were very strict rules about who paid for what.
Yes, there were. Everybody had their own accounting system, and you didn't break that accounting system. If this was your role, somebody else can't step in, which is odd.
Yeah, because they might be accused of trying to take over for some nefarious reason.
Yeah, they did get plenty of presents from Grandma Margaret.
That's what grandmothers are for. Mm-hmm. Although Margaret was the eldest, the nursery was known as the Lord Prince's household. So no surprise there. Sometimes Mum and Dad would turn up with their retinue, which must have been highly exciting for the kids.
See all the display of what people are wearing on all the horses and stuff.
And they'd spend their evening watching acrobats and Henry VII's huge collection of fools. And, quote, a fellow that ate coals, unquote.
That doesn't sound fun.
They watched him do it. They must have thought it was fun. Yeah, I imagine the winter evenings flew by watching people eat coal. And I assumed they were hot coals, but there's no reason to think that they were. A man just sitting chomping away on coal, it doesn't sound at all interesting.
No. Maybe it's a fire eater.
Presumably Henry would have insisted on listening to his children playing on their musical instruments since he was paying for their lessons.
Do you really want that torture, though?
Well, Henry was very good, young Henry. I don't know how good the others were, but he was very musical. I feel it's not very fair on poor Arthur. He missed out on all this sibling camaraderie. And he had to start his formal education a year younger than them.
And he never learned to share. We don't know that. I'm just...
So what would they have learnt once their formal education kicked in? They'd have learnt some science, including astronomy and maths. And this was for the girls, as well as the boys, up to the age of 7.
Really? Well, I guess, yes, queens would have had to maintain accounts. No, they had people to do that for them. Maybe Henry was just obsessed with finances. If I have to check it, you need to check it because you can never trust anybody.
Yes. You work hard at your maths because you'll need it for your accounts.
Yes.
Accounts are fun. You'll love accounts.
Yes. You can play with the gold underneath your bed.
Yeah. They also learnt languages, particularly French and Latin, the classics, and, of course, scripture. And they would play instruments and dance, ride and practice archery, hunting and falconry. And they would learn sports, but were discouraged from overdoing it, since it was believed that would stunt their development.
Really? Interesting.
Henry's tutor was John Skelton, who is still lurking in our boxes. He's one of our people. And Lord Mountjoy also had a profound effect on the children's education, as we'll see when we do him next season. He's more of a next season person. Henry was particularly adept at Latin. So that's good. He knew his hick from his hike and his hock. The children had some very erudite visitors. In 1499, Thomas More came to call with his friend, we talked about him already, Erasmus. And More had brought something he'd written for the occasion. But Erasmus hadn't realised he'd be meeting the royal children because More hadn't thought to tell him.
Doesn't Henry make a comment about it?
He'd sent him a note, just saying, could you bring something along for next time? And Erasmus was furious with More. I can't help feeling that
More did
More
it on
had set
purpose.
him up.
I'm better than this man. Look what I brought you. He didn't bring you anything?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know whether Henry was being nasty about it or just saying, oh, I'd be very interested in something you've written. If you wouldn't mind bringing something next
As a
time.
child,
But,
though?
Yeah. Just as Arthur had Griffith ap Rhys as his companion, Prince Henry had Charles Brandon,
Yes.
who became a ward of the king on his father's death at Bosworth. He was the standard bearer who was cut down during Richard's charge.
Right.
Henry had 3 other friends, whom he knew from this age, who were to be very important to him. John, it was either John St. John or John St. John, sometimes it's pronounced St. John, was close to Henry throughout his reign and was also guardian to Henry's daughter Mary and chamberlain to Elizabeth.
Oh.
There was also Edward Neville and Henry Courtenay, who both followed similar trajectories in that they were knighted or ennobled and then executed for treason.
Oh, dear.
So he had half of the friends who were especially close to him when he was growing up. Executed.
What a lovely person you are.
Mm-hmm. A friend for the girls was Jane Poppincourt. They had lovely surnames.
Yeah.
Jane became a lifelong friend of Mary, even accompanying her to France to marry Louis XII. Mary married Louis XII. Jane Poppincourt didn't. The person the children really relied on was, of course,
Grandma.
Yeah. She had rooms at Sheen and Placentia where she could be with the children. And also she could help Elizabeth with her confinements, along with Elizabeth's mother, Elizabeth Woodville, and her sisters.
That's something to put you off of childbirth. You're a younger sister. You're going to watch your sister give birth. Never doing this.
I'm never doing that.
No.
On the 14th of September 1495, little Princess Elizabeth suddenly died.
Yeah.
And it seems to have been completely unexpected and must have been devastating for the other children since they'd been such a close unit.
Mm-hmm.
King Henry and Elizabeth were on progress when they heard the news. They didn't come back. They're in Northamptonshire. I suppose it's too late. There's nothing you can do by that point. But it's interesting that there was no idea of coming back to comfort the other children.
Yeah.
Maybe progresses take such a huge amount of organisation that you just can't cut it short.
I don't know. That's an odd thing to not do.
You'd feel you'd want to be together.
Yeah.
But that's probably a very modern nuclear family type.
Is it, though? I mean, we know that they did love their children. But, I don't know. It seems odd.
But other people cared for them. I mean, other people were paid to care for them, so they... Yeah. Princess Elizabeth was given a very grand funeral in Westminster Abbey, where she was apparently buried near Henry III, although the plaque is now lost. King Henry had been in negotiations to marry little Elizabeth to Charles, later to be Charles V, Philip the Fair and Juana's son. So a very prestigious match, sadly now curtailed. The death of little Elizabeth coincided with Henry's problems with Perkin Warbeck, and I wondered how much his grief for his little girl affected his attitude to Perkin. Also, the negotiations for the marriage of Princess Margaret and James IV of Scotland were ratcheted up, maybe as a means to secure the royal family's role on the wider stage. And also, as we've heard, because Ferdinand was saying, if you don't send him Margaret, we'll have to send him Catherine, and you don't want that, do you, Henry? Earlier in this year, 1495, Henry had executed William Stanley for allegedly siding with Perkin. Henry must have been feeling at siege, and then to lose one of his children, must have knocked him for six, really.
Honestly, how do you keep psychologically sound during all of this?
I don't know. But suddenly his little family and the security of his country
is at risk.
Both under threat.
Yeah.
But on the 18th of March, 1496, another baby was born, Mary. And I don't know how soon after the idea was mooted that maybe Mary could take her sister's place as potential wife for Charles. Probably immediately, I would think. So, right, it's a girl. She can jump into the
marriage bed.
The family were all together, apart presumably from Arthur, at Sheen for Christmas in 1497. And on the 21st of December at 9 at night, the children were grabbed from their beds and they fled with the rest of the household out into the garden.
Because it was on
fire. And there they stood and watched as all the furniture, the tapestries, the books all went up in flames. And apparently the fire started in the Queen's apartment. I bet she didn't hear the end of that.
Yes. Do you have any idea how much you just cost us?
Yes. And what did you do with that candle? You weren't smoking in bed, were you? The building was completely gutted, but no one died. And the royal family managed to get out, even though apparently the corridors were collapsing about them as they ran, like a proper video game.
Gosh.
And even more importantly, the Milanese ambassador got out too. So,
Good.
yeah. Well, we like a Milanese ambassador.
We do. They give us a lot of detail.
They do. On 21st of February 1499, another child. And this one was Edward or Edmund, depending on which of the documents you look at. So now they've got 5 children. They've got Arthur, Margaret, Henry, Mary and Edmund. But sadly, June 1500, despite all precautions, plague seems to have reached Hatfield House where the children were living, and little Edmund succumbed, aged just 15 months.
Oh, the poor thing.
Henry and Elizabeth were hunkering down in that church outside Calais, meeting Philip the Fair and eating cherries. So they only got the news when they landed back in England. And Edmund was buried next to his sister. On a happier note, at least temporarily, Catherine of Aragon was due to arrive in England the next year. And Arthur was now of age when he was making decisions about his marcher lands himself as Prince of Wales.
Which is crazy.
It is. But then he's been trained for it.
From birth.
Which is more than Prince Henry ever was.
Oh, God. Yeah.
King Henry was keen to flaunt his children at court, and they began to take an official role. He was more secure on the throne, since Perkin and Edward Plantagenet had been executed the year before. When the children were little, there was no attraction to ingratiating oneself into their household, but unless you happen to like kids, I suppose.
Yeah.
As they got older and potentially had more power and influence, more nobles suddenly felt that was the place to be.
Really?
Yeah.
Not with Arthur. Interesting. What did they think they were going to get out of it? Maybe attend or go with the queens to whatever kingdom they were going to be queens of?
Maybe it's not an option. I mean, you can't just rock up at Arthur's court and say, I'm moving in. And, maybe the same goes for Henry's and Elizabeth's, but if you're slightly lower down the scale, you can maybe sidle up to the kids. All the children had their roles to play at Arthur's wedding. Margaret and Mary stayed with their parents in a show of Tudor force, and Henry...
A tour de force. Sorry.
Henry, on the other hand, accompanied Catherine through London to the ceremony and later led the dancing, and it was generally agreed, in his element.
Yes.
And we hear that he stripped off his jacket so he could dance more easily. We hear that from several sources. And it wasn't usual, and everybody loved it. And I suppose with everything else so carefully choreographed, that was the only spontaneous action of the entire day, I should think. So, But I wondered if his dad had words with him about it later.
Don't know. Did his dad say something like the boy will outlive us all?
Something like that, yes. I mean, it must be nice when your life is so regimented and somebody suddenly does something like that. You must think, oh, goodness.
Yeah.
But the Tudor dynasty is now all set up. Nothing can upset the apple cart now.
Nothing. Not a thing. It's so safe.
In the spring of 1502, the sweating sickness reached Ludlow. Arthur died. Catherine was very ill. It was said that if you could live for 24 hours, you'd probably survive. But it was pretty grim for those 24 hours. Now there was the task of breaking the news to Arthur's parents.
God.
The king's councillors didn't want to do it.
No.
The job went to Henry's confessor, and I presume that was John Fisher, although I couldn't find confirmation of that. He's Margaret Beaufort's confessor.
Yeah.
He told Henry, quote, "If we accept good things from the hand of God, why do we not also sustain misfortunes?" unquote. Henry and Elizabeth consoled each other, as we've seen before. Arthur's funeral was delayed for a while, and I had read this was because of the state of the roads and the bad weather, but there may have been another reason. Catherine was still ill. They may have been waiting to see if it was going to be a double funeral.
Ooh, that's dark.
Arthur's body was buried in Worcester Cathedral, and his viscera was kept in a lead casket in Ludlow.
Gross.
The lead casket was said to have been sold by the gravedigger to a plumber called Robert Pitt. And when the rector heard about this, he bought it back and replaced it in Ludlow Church. And I was wondering what Robert Pitt would want to do with a box of organs and intestines. We know it's not unusual for people to take souvenirs because somebody nicked the head of James IV, didn't they?
Yes, and relics. Don't forget relics.
But I thought it might be relevant that the man's a plumber. He might have just, emptied the viscera out for the cat or something because he wanted the lead for doing pipes.
For the cat, Lucy. Come on.
None of his family were able to get to Worcester for the funeral, and it wasn't usual for royal families to attend funerals anyway.
No, it was against the rules.
The chief mourner was Arthur's nurse, Elizabeth Darcy.
That's also weird that you give somebody a chief mourner position.
Oh, well, that went on. You had that in Victorian times, didn't you? And the mute. I presumably it didn't have to be mute. They just had not to speak. Just don't speak for the duration of the funeral. The organisation of the funeral was overseen by the Earl of Surrey, Thomas Howard. Arthur's death made a huge difference to Prince Henry. His life would change forever. He was 11.
Now he's the heir.
It was originally planned that he'd go to Ludlow. And this would have been a huge wrench for Margaret and Mary, who'd spent their whole childhoods with him.
Yeah?
In January 1502, the wishfully named Treaty of Perpetual Peace was signed.
I thought you said Tweety of Perpetual Peace.
The Tweet of Perpetual Peace. And that's the negotiations for Margaret to marry Charles IV. And a proxy wedding took place at Richmond Palace with the Earl of Bothwell standing in for James and Catherine Gordon as one of the ladies, which was a bit awkward since Bothwell had chosen her sister over her.
And I'm assuming that Bothwell is the father of the later Bothwell? Well, grandfather, maybe.
Might be grandfather.
Grandfather, yeah.
Yeah, that makes more sense. Margaret was now above her brother Henry in the pecking order. She was officially Queen of Scotland, and that put her on a par with her mother.
Right.
And she got to sit at the Queen's dining table, and Prince Henry threw a big tantrum.
Of course he did.
He wanted to sit at the Queen's dining table. So it's a bit sad for Princess Mary. Her siblings were heading off for pastures new roles and new responsibilities. But she was only 6.
Yeah.
But luckily, she would soon have a little brother or sister to play with since Elizabeth of York was pregnant again. There is mention in Elizabeth's account of 3 shillings and 4pence to someone who brought her some grapes while she was pregnant, which is good going. It's the middle of winter.
Yeah.
I don't know where they got these grapes from. Elizabeth was 36. She's what would now be called a geriatric mother.
Isn't that disgusting?
It is. My daughter was 36 when she was pregnant, and she was a geriatric mother.
Yeah.
She wasn't happy about that.
A man made up that term. A woman did not.
She hadn't had any trouble in the past, so probably all right. Her confinement took place at Richmond, and on the 2nd of February she went into labour unexpectedly. And Princess Margaret might well have been present for the birth. She was old enough to assist her mother, although on this occasion I really hope she wasn't there.
Me too.
A little girl was born, and they called her Catherine. And there was a private baptism, which reflected the fact the birth had been unexpected. 9 days later, Elizabeth died of what they called childbed fever. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. Puerperal fever?
I don't know either.
Puerperal.
To be honest, whenever I see it, I just call it purple fever.
Yes.
I know it's not purple fever, but that's the best I can do.
Yeah. Quote, the Queen's departing was as heavy and dolorous to the King as ever was seen or heard of, unquote. And Henry went into seclusion, and again Thomas Howard, Earl of Surrey, organised the funeral at a cost of £2,000. And that's 1.5 million in today's money. Just out of interest, I looked up how much Elizabeth II's funeral had cost. Nearly £150 million. 100 times more. A week later, baby Catherine died. Quote, she tarried but a small season after her mother, unquote. So Henry had lost 2 sons, 2 daughters, and his wife, and he was looking older than his 46 years. No wonder he got so fed up with Edmund de la Pole.
Yeah.
He's probably thought, look, I just don't need this. There's a famous image of Henry on his throne conducting the business of state. And behind him, Margaret and Mary are sewing, and right at the back of the scene you can see Prince Henry lying across the bed, completely distraught, which is an extraordinary image for the time.
I haven't seen
I don't
that
think there's
one.
anything like it.
Does it have a title?
I should just put in Henry crying at the death of his mother.
Oh, there it is. Aww. Oh my gosh. And the title, okay, so he's in the background, and the title BBC News gives this article is Young Henry VIII revealed at National Library of Wales. He's like peripheral. You can barely see most of him.
Well, I suppose what he's doing is a bit more interesting than what Henry and Margaret and Mary are doing.
Maybe.
Now, I don't think anyone would look twice at that picture if he wasn't prostrate. He obviously loved his mum, and was he looking to replace her with his own wives? Maybe we'll see next season.
I don't know, because Elizabeth and James also, or Edward, fell apart crying when Henry VIII died, and he was a horrible parent.
Each of the children felt Elizabeth's loss in different ways. Mary was just 6, so she'd lost out on having a mother for her childhood. Margaret was being tutored by her mother on how to be a queen. Elizabeth's accounts show that they were often in each other's company. And Prince Henry and Margaret were now faced with dealing with a lot of court ceremonies as their father shut himself away and dealt with problems of the realm from behind closed doors. Mary Louise Bruce, in The Making of Henry VIII, said of the 3 people who had the most influence on Prince Henry, his father, his mother, and Margaret Beaufort, quote, all of them emotionally battered, all of them haunted by past insecurities, were to shape the childhood of the future Henry VIII, unquote.
Very true.
And I think she's implying that that might be significant. But then we've looked at royal families across Europe, and they are all highly dysfunctional. And
Yes.
no royal child grows up unscathed, do they?
No. You would think that they would, but no.
We've looked at Isabella, Maximilian, Charles VIII.
Was it? I'm trying to think of which French king. His boys ended up in prison in Spain before they got back. It was the boy was the husband of... Oh, I remember her name now. Catherine de Medici.
Oh, right.
One of her husband and his brother spent a lot of their time in a prison in Spain. They were held captive there, and their father couldn't care less. Just left them there for years.
Ivan the Terrible.
Oh, gosh, yes.
Was imprisoned as a child.
Killed his own son.
Not a good childhood and not good father.
No.
In 1503, Princess Margaret went to live with Margaret Beaufort at Collie Weston, and this was to carry on her instruction in queenliness. All right, Margaret Beaufort might not have been a real queen, but she'd have made a damn good one if she had been.
Yeah, she was the queen. She was.
Just 4 months after the death of her mother, Margaret set off for Scotland. She'd never see her father or grandmother again. You do get the feeling of light going out in the court with Elizabeth's death and Margaret's departure, and King Henry very much keeping himself to himself.
And his son basically locked up.
Yeah. I'm imagining hushed corridors and everyone walking on eggshells. And
Yeah.
however, life goes on, and it was time for Henry VII to find another wife. And to hear more about that, listen to the Henry in Love episode. When Philip and Juana were washed up on the beach in Dorset, one of the outcomes of Philip's enforced stay with Henry were suggestions for betrothals to link the 2 countries.
Mm.
Henry VII would marry Margaret of Austria. Not sure what she has to say about that. We will find out soon. Princess Mary would marry the future Charles V. And Prince Henry would marry Philip's daughter Eleanor. Only the Mary-Charles match went as far as a betrothal, and that was largely because on Philip's death in 1506, Henry was then negotiating with Maximilian, and we all know what was likely to swing Maximilian's opinion.
Money!
And purely coincidentally, it's then that Henry lent Maximilian £30,000. What of Prince Henry now that he was heir? The focus of his education changed. He was now being prepared for kingship, although his father was concerned that he wasn't serious enough. All this taking your jacket off and swinging it round your head, it's not the right image.
Yeah, that's not kingly behaviour.
He did like books, though. And Henry VII had started collecting books as soon as he became king, because Philip the Good had a library.
I can have a
Why
library.
shouldn't he have a library? Yeah, I'm king, I can have a library. He bought classics and the new humanist books, and there were also romances and chivalric tales. And romances aren't Mills and Boon, they are like chivalric tales, which, of course, Prince Henry lapped up.
Yeah. Well, he is, after all, a knight.
Yep, he is. Even if he was 3 at the time. This all meant that Prince Henry's preparation for kingship was academic rather than practical. And we've seen from medicine and dissection how book learning was valued over practical use. Even when what you see is different from what it says in the books, you say, no, this is what it says in the book.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't head councils or make decisions like Arthur had done. One of the very few charters that bear his signature is one agreeing that the Earl of Ormond could hold a weekly market.
Really? Well done.
Yep. And he didn't leave the court. I read that Henry VII was worried of sickness if his son went to Ludlow, but we heard of another possible reason. In the episode about the convoluted toings and froings of Catherine of Aragon's dowry, we heard that Ferdinand had been stirring to such an extent that he may have been offering Prince Henry an army to overthrow his father.
Right.
So keep the boy close.
So he can't do that. Well, after the War of the Roses, it's not that out of left field.
No. And there is another reason that we seem to come across again and again and again. That conversation between Nan Fan and Hugh Conway. That John Flamank blabbed to Henry, even though he'd signed a promise that he'd keep quiet. Conway had said that when the king had been ill, and it wasn't considered likely he'd survive, a successor would be needed.
Yes.
Some people talked of the Duke of Buckingham, some talked of Edmund de la Pole, and none talked of Prince Henry. So it was not only a dangerous world out there for young Henry, it was a dangerous world in the court. In fact, the king told young Henry to join him at Westminster, and he was given apartments right next to the king's.
I'm wondering why they didn't speak of Henry. Was it because of his age, or was it because they thought, this guy's a fop? He can't do anything right. Have you seen him? He even dances without a jacket.
And no one could get to him.
Oh, out of sight, out of mind. You don't think about him.
Well, I don't think it was that. They couldn't get to him. He was in Purdah, effectively.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
He had to ask his father's permission just to visit elsewhere in the Palace of Westminster.
Right.
The only people who were allowed to talk to him had been vetted first. So, I mean, you can imagine what Prince Henry thought about this.
Yeah.
He wasn't going to have his own domain to practice on in the Welsh marches. He wasn't allowed to joust. He had to live next door to Dad. It just wasn't fair.
Hence why he was jousting as soon as his dad was dead.
Yes, and probably everything else that his dad told him not to do. And you wonder what it did to his mental health, living in such an atmosphere of suspicion.
Well, he remains suspicious and starts killing people later, so...
Yes, it's been ingrained from an early age.
Mm-hmm.
And we know how secluded he was by the fact that the ambassadors made so few comments about him. They couldn't get access to him.
No.
Although Henry VII said, quote, "I keep the prince with me because I wish to improve him," unquote, implying that there's a lot of room for improvement. If that was the reason, it certainly wasn't the only one. Prince Henry was very close to Lord Mountjoy and looked upon him a little like an elder brother. But Henry VII got to thinking, Mountjoy's father-in-law was Edmund de la Pole's cousin. Could he really be trusted? So Mountjoy was sent to be governor of Ham's Castle. Ham, whatever. and he was bound up with recognizances should he fail in his duty. And there was further stipulation that if any of Mountjoy's guarantors should die and he couldn't find a replacement for them, Mountjoy would be bound for a further 10,000 marks. And it was made worse by the fact that one of Mountjoy's guarantors was Lord Bergavenny, who was in even tighter financial net than Mountjoy was. He'd just been clobbered for a massive amount, something like 70,000 for keeping a retinue.
Jeez.
So to keep his son safe, Henry VII was depriving him of his friend and brother figure, while making that man's life a misery, just because of a pretty far-removed family tie with Edmund de la Pole. And maybe that would explain the bonds and recognizances. Henry VII was trying to pinion his nobility. If they could barely move because they were so bound up with debts and fines, they wouldn't be in a position to be a threat to his little boy. I mean, you've got to feel sorry for Prince Henry.
Yeah.
If it weren't for all the stuff that came later.
Yeah.
Henry spent 5 years under the tutelage of John Skelton, but around this time Skelton disgraced himself and was dismissed from court. And to find out why, you'll have to wait for his episode. Well, I'll have to wait for his episode because I don't know why. Skelton was replaced by William Hone, who was so grey and boring that we know practically nothing about him. And Prince Henry must have been very disappointed because Skelton sounds a lot more fun. Henry was also taught music by Robert Fairfax and William Cornish. I mean, you couldn't get better than that at the time. He became very proficient on the organ, the lute and the harpsichord, which I wondered about because I assumed the harpsichord had been invented much later.
Yeah, me too.
But the first recorded one was dated 1397.
Wow. Okay, that is surprising.
Huh. I know in later life he played the recorder too and had loads of them. So he wasn't all bad. I don't know if he played the Rauschpfeifer. Certainly not in later life, because you shouldn't play a Rauschpfeifer if you've got high blood pressure. And I think if anyone had high blood pressure, it was going to be Henry. When he wasn't plonking away on his harpsichord, Henry was learning military skills. He'd already been learning to shoot with a longbow. Now it was time to learn to fight with a spear, a sword and a poleaxe, which is lovely. A bust of a Saracen's head was put up as a target.
Oh, God.
And I wondered if that's why there are lots of pubs in England
Saracen's
called the
Head.
Saracen's Head. Yeah. I looked it up and it just said it commemorated the Crusades, but I wondered if there was a tilting yard nearby, and that's why they called.
That would make more sense.
Yeah. Anyway, Henry was very good at it. Henry was taught, presumably at the insistence of his father, that peace was the ideal and war should be avoided wherever possible.
He didn't take that lesson to heart.
You don't think he did? Well, having said that, Henry VII left instructions in his will that a gold-plated image of him in full armour should be put in the shrine of Edward the Confessor in Westminster Abbey as a reminder that he got the throne through battle. Avoid war, but we were very lucky when we went to war, because that's why we're here. What was the prince's opinion when he was told he had to repudiate Catherine of Aragon? We know he wanted to marry her by the speed with which he did it when his father died. But he was being told to say he didn't want to marry her and that he'd been forced into it when he was under age. He wrote to Pope Julius telling him that Catherine had threatened to make a vow dedicating herself to a life of prayer, fasting, pilgrimage and abstinence, and he begged the Pope to forbid her from making this vow. And Julius complied and sent young Henry a brief which gave him the right to tell his wife, in inverted commas, what she could or could not do with her own body, just in case he should want to go back on his repudiation and marry her after all. However, if Henry thought he'd got his wife under his thumb, she felt the same about him, because she said to the Spanish ambassador, I'm not sure which one, there were a few, quote, "If the king were dead, I should have no difficulty with the prince," unquote, meaning that she'd be able to get him to do Ferdinand's bidding, which indeed she did.
Yes, she did very easily.
The prince wasn't always subservient to his father. John Style, the English ambassador to Spain, sent Henry VII a letter that he didn't want to receive. The king had been moonstruck by Juana.
Right.
And with Catherine of Aragon as go-between, he had been hoping marriage would be a foregone conclusion. However, Ferdinand had told Henry that the marriage wouldn't be possible until Juana agreed to relinquish the body of her husband, Philip the Fair, and that didn't seem to be happening anytime soon. Style wrote to Henry to tell him that Ferdinand had been stringing him along. Style had managed to get a few interviews with Juana herself, and he said that not only was Ferdinand not going to allow the marriage, but he'd locked his daughter away. Henry was so furious that no one dared speak to him. And then he called his son to him and told him what had happened and waited for the prince to console him. But young Henry didn't console him. His father had already taken his wife away from him.
Right.
Why should he sympathise that Ferdinand had taken Juana away from Henry? And he told him as much.
Ooh.
He told his father, "Why do you want Juana? She's completely mad. And anyway, you're far too old for love." Yeah, and then he probably stormed off to listen to My Chemical Romance in his black bedroom. One of the court ladies said of King Henry, quote, "He scolded the prince as though he would kill him," unquote. Ooh. So I think we're going beyond scold.
Yes.
Then the king, quote, "sat in a chair as though transfixed, eyes shut, for 2 or 3 hours, neither awake nor asleep," unquote.
Just fuming.
And that's the last time we hear of the prince crossing his father. I wonder if he said it and he suddenly realised, oh my God, I said that out loud, didn't I? From then on, as Fuensalida said, the prince, quote, "was as carefully chaperoned as a young girl," unquote. Any ill treatment we heard of Henry VII meting out to Catherine of Aragon was for her part in her father's deception. She was not invited to join in the Christmas festivities, although I can't imagine they were very festive. She was probably better off out of them. She lived in a room over the stables, and when the royal entourage went for rides or glided up and down the river, Henry always made sure it was where Catherine would be able to see them. Mm. And he probably told everyone, "Laugh, come on, look as if you're having fun." And rich food was taken to Henry and his family, and any old stuff was given to Catherine. So it's no wonder Catherine relied so heavily on her confessor. I mean, she's being tortured here, effectively.
Yes.
And that's all down to what her dad's been up to. What Prince Henry and indeed Princess Margaret felt about having to be part of this cruelty, we don't know. But it might be significant that when Henry VIII had a portrait painted of his mother and father and Jane Seymour, although he looks manly and strong and regal, his father seems to be hovering about in the background in his dressing gown, as if he's just been surprised nipping down to the kitchen to make himself a cocoa. Was that Henry's revenge on his father? Because he does. He looks like a wraith, really, doesn't he? He doesn't look like, compared to his great big son. I think there must have been a lot of resentment there.
Well, he was virtually a prisoner.
And to explode like that in front of his dad and to say, "You're too old for love."
Yeah, but that's typical teenage rebellion. I don't know.
It is, but if your dad's king...
Yeah.
There's a lot you can do. And like many children who've been brought up in the lap of luxury made possible by their father's hard graft, Henry found Henry VII's grasping at money humiliating.
Yeah, but that's how you got all that money, you dummy.
Yeah, and you'll have it to spend. But royalty was not meant to act like a common moneylender. And as we saw in Henry's Millions episode, Henry VIII threw caution and everything else to the wind, and it was spend, 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 like a proper monarch. That's what monarchs do. They spend, they don't grasp.
Sure.
His tutor, John Skelton, had advised him, quote, "Be bountiful, liberal, generous, and lavish," unquote. And Henry was just that and a lot more. And I think this was part of the reason why 2 of the first people that Henry had executed were Dudley and Empson, because they had dragged his father down to the level of a bailiff, effectively, as he would have seen it.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how much it was, "Oh, I must protect my people from these horrible men," whether it was more, "They've humiliated me."
Yeah.
And one thing we do know about Henry VIII is he doesn't take humiliation kind of
No,
easily.
he does not.
No. In later years, Henry VII tried to consolidate a legacy. He wanted to leave his son not only money, quite a lot of money, but also a more sophisticated court. So he commissioned histories to be written. He tried to make sure his building projects, namely Richmond and Greenwich, would be completed before he died, and he commissioned that tomb for himself and Elizabeth in the new chapel in Westminster. But whether this was regal enough for Prince Henry,
Probably not.
I doubt. But with Margaret in Scotland and Prince Henry being groomed for monarchy, 7-year-old Mary must have felt quite lonely.
Oh, yeah.
It was her turn to be present at court ceremonies, and everyone seems to have been very impressed by her. They would say that, wouldn't they?
Yes, but she was considered very beautiful even in other places. Everybody mentions that.
And we do hear of her being centre stage when Philip the Fair came to call,
Yeah.
whether he liked it or not. Mary, then 11, eclipsed Catherine of Aragon, who was already humiliated by Philip's refusal to dance with her. And despite that, Mary and Catherine were very good friends, and Catherine was a great influence on her. So it must have been even harder for her to have to go through this rigmarole of, look, aren't we having fun, and Catherine's not here.
Yeah.
Although Mary's education wasn't as rigorous as Prince Henry's had been, Catherine was about to pass on knowledge that she got growing up in Isabella's court, because she'd been educated.
Yes.
When Mary was 12, she took part in the proxy marriage with the future Charles V. She spoke in French. And Mary was now the highest-ranking lady at court. But I thought, actually, she probably was already. I mean, she was princess in a court with no queen. I mean, she probably would have been.
Yeah, wouldn't she have performed those roles?
I'd have thought so. But now she could sit next to her father. And Charles started sending her expensive gifts. I don't know whether Henry threw a strop again. Why does she get to sit next to you?
Yes, probably.
He probably didn't want to sit next to him after what had happened to him when he had his little outburst. Mary's life was in sharp contrast to Catherine of Aragon's life at the time. And she was writing letters to her father saying she had no money. So I really hope Mary wasn't saying to her, oh, look what my future husband's sending me.
Yeah.
And waving jewellery in her face. I hope Mary was more tactful than that. However, it was not all plain sailing for Mary. When her brother became king, for various reasons we'll go into in Mary's episode, she was forced to go back on her betrothal to Charles, and it was decided she would marry Louis XII instead. Quite an old and gouty man by this point. Mary had to stand up and announce that she did this of her own free will.
Yeah, right.
But it was recorded she didn't do it with her usual self-confidence. Henry VIII said it was all Maximilian's fault. I think that's a general policy, isn't it? Whatever you're doing.
Blame somebody else.
If it goes wrong, blame Maximilian. If he'd got on with the marriage, none of this would have happened. And he had a point. I mean, Maxie had pocketed the money from Henry VII and then dragged his feet. Maybe he was hoping to get more money the longer it went on, but he left it too long. And Henry said, no, enough. Charles was furious. And who can blame him? He'd been sending all those expensive presents. Mary and Louis were married on the 9th of October, 1514, and Mary, along with Anne Boleyn, set off for France. Backtracking to 1509, Henry VII's health was declining. Prince Henry was 17, so at least the king didn't have to worry about a lengthy minority. The Spanish ambassador, Fuensalida, wrote to Ferdinand about Catherine, quote, "The princess may well become the Queen of England." Oh, he got one thing right then. But that prospect offers her the most unfortunate life that ever woman had. Do you really believe, Your Highness, that there is any chance of the prince being better than his father? Pray God that may come true, but there are no signs of it, unquote. How Fuensalida came by this opinion is hard to say, since he'd only actually talked to the prince once, because Fuensalida had made Henry VII so infuriated with his high-handed ways
to see him.
Henry refused to have anything to do with him. So, presumably, this is the gossip around the court.
Yeah.
And that may have stemmed from what Nan Fan and Hugh Conway had been worrying about. The more ill Henry VII got, the more short-tempered he was. Was Prince Henry excited about his future as his father approached his end, or was he terrified? He'd been so cloistered, it must surely have been daunting to go from there to being King of England. But for one thing, This was a young man who craved the limelight.
Yeah.
And who'd been brought up to believe that he was a special being chosen by God. Maybe he was just champing at the bit just to get away from his father's deadening influence.
No pun intended.
Henry VII... Sorry. No pun noticed at the time. Henry VII was keeping up the negotiations for his marriage to Juana to his last days. He was afraid for his soul and sometimes wept for an hour at a time. He died on the 21st of April, and sadly, from what some reports say, the whole country rejoiced.
Yeah.
Little did they know.
Yeah.
And that's the story of Henry and Elizabeth's children. Ups and downs.
Mostly downs.
Yeah, that's history for you, though, isn't it?
Interesting. I wish there was a way to sort of recreate the situation to see how things absolutely happened, rather than as much conjecture as we have to do.
We're relying on people like Fuensalida telling us things that we didn't know firsthand. See, we need the Milanese ambassador. He'd know what it was all about.
But then would history be as interesting if we didn't have to piece together things? It's more of a puzzle this way.
Yeah, I'm just researching Matthias Corvinus for the Patreon episode. There's no books in English about him.
Ah, that's always difficult.
Hungarian and German.
Yeah.
I've had to cobble together things from all sorts of different sources, and it's much more interesting.
Yeah, I found that with Margaret of Austria.
Oh, really?
Tons of stuff in French. But 14th century French.
Yes. Yeah.
It's like, what does this mean? Best part is my husband's completely fluent. And I say, what is this? I don't know. What the hell is that? Never mind. Yeah.
Well, it'd be interesting to look at how much, I mean, just depending on what we decide about Henry VIII, we might decide he's lovely. But if we don't, it would be interesting to decide how much we could blame the parents for how he turned out.
Maybe. I don't know. We will have to wait and see. But that's the end of the episode. Goodbye.
It is. Goodbye.